Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. This week I'm working on a really colorful carnival inspired ring pour. So I decided on some light blue violet, fluorescent pink, some turquoise, and as my contrast color, some Amsterdam ivory black. Okay, now as I get into my colors here, I decided to go with brightest to darkest in terms of color combinations. So began with a lighter blue, the fluorescent pink, which is quite bright, and then this nice turquoise color. And just breaking up the colors by giving it some black, which I felt like might have been a bit too much. We'll have to see later on how that shakes out. This was quite the process, so just kind of hang in there with me and we'll get to it soon enough. And now thinking back on my previous pours I've done in the past year, this may be the first ring pour I've done in probably well over 6 or 8 months, so I was really a bit out of practice. I wanted to use limited colors because of some possible errors and a bit of a smaller canvas. So this canvas is 11 by 14 inches. And again, limiting my colors to 3 colors with my breakup color as my black, which worked just fine. And overall, I was pretty happy with how these layers were going. And the colors it was giving out were fairly dynamic and quite bright. So I was very happy with how those layers were turning out. All right, and question of the week from myself is, those of you who pour, do you mix your paints to, we'll call it the quantity you may need exactly or slightly over for the size of your canvas the day before or a few days before? Or do you mix more paint than necessary into bottles for future use in order not to waste more time on mixing your paints plus medium plus flowchart, etc. Again, to burn up time when you could be pouring more than once in a given week. So my predicament is I tend to mix my paint colors when I need them for the pour I'm doing. So in this case, I mixed about 12 ounces of paint total and had really no room for error. And I'm curious to know if those of you again who pour and have experience in this would mix more than necessary. How do you store it? How much do you keep? Give me the details on what you do, and I'm really curious. Give me some comments down below and we can talk about it. All right, getting into this ring pour, I decided about, 3-4 seconds into this pour, I was going to go for more of a straight pour than a ring pour, then decided back again to a ring pour, and then back to a straight pour. So I went back and forth a few times. So there are some techniques overlapping in this particular video this week, which is fine. It's all fun to play with paint. As these colors are coming out of the cup, I did notice that I had a little less pink than I was hoping for. Now, I realized looking back on the first part of the video that I didn't add much pink to begin with. Of course, in ring pours or in stacked cup pours, whichever color is on the bottom comes out last on top, right? So there, it's backward for stacking. I did need a bit more pink, but I was happy with my blues and my violets that were poking out. And here we go with a bit of a overhead look on the spreading my paints just back and forth to cover more canvas area before working on a bit of a swipe. Now, one quick comment regarding my paint and how quickly it's moving. Now, this is at actually about 1.5 times actual speed, so I was going very slow with my just coverage of the canvas, making sure that it covered most of the corners before tilting off. That this paint was actually really thick compared to what I use normally for a swipe or a puddle pour, for example. But I'm curious to know, if you pre-mix your guys' paint before you paint, let's say a day or two, does your paint thicken up, and how do you thin it without adding too much water the day of or day before, which would cause pinholes or bubbles? So I've got a couple of questions there. When you mix, do you mix again the day of just to thin it out? And if you do you wind up getting those pinholes we all hate so much? Okay, and going in for my second swipe here, I neglected to talk over the first, so this is my second of 2 swipes with my Amsterdam titanium white and cell activator, which includes 1 part paint and 1 part Floetrol with some water and some Penetrol as an additive. Now I added these swipes because I wasn't happy with the color I got with my ring pours. Now I wanted to go again very slow. There was quite a bit of paint on this canvas, which was great because I had lots of flexibility for what I could do and what kind of design or pattern I wound up with. So I was slow, went back and forth, made sure to take my time here. Again, no rush, so I wanted to just take it calm and cool and see what happened in the end. Now, being mindful of my 2 swipes, I wanted to be very careful not to spill over my cells I managed to make because I only made those small 2 little narrow lines of swiping. So as I went back and forth, I wanted to try to spill off the corners on the left and the top side closest to me first because, again, my swiping lanes, we'll call it, were very narrow and I didn't want to spill off too much white paint yet because I wanted to have that embellishment for the lacing front and center. And now a little fun tip for those of you who might be newer in terms of the pour painting art, we'll call it. As you decide to spill off a corner, I always recommend trying to bring your paint back to the center to just make sure there's equal distribution of how much paint you plan to dump over whatever side you're going for. Now I went from corner to corner, which is not ideal for me, but after this dump here off this side, I want to bring that blue back into the middle before moving on to spill off my last corner. If you try to swing it around like that, it can kind of cause a bit of a distortion in terms of where your paint colors want to be. Now, this last corner took about 1,000 years, so I decided to speed through it and just skip through the end. So this pour wasn't exactly what I had gone for in terms of color combination, but I was quite happy with what looked to me like a blue rose in the middle if you look nice and slow at the end. Now there's lessons to take away from each pour, which I really like. In terms of this week's pour, again, this is for a ring pour, meant to be bright, which we can clearly see it's not, but they're that little blue roses in the middle, which I think is kind of pretty. Ultimately, I learned to not use quite as much black in my split cups because it can cause a bit of a muddy look and way more color going forward. Alright, and going in for a bit of an overhead wet look of the finished results. Now, lots of pretty lines and cool little embellishments of the white Amsterdam titanium white cell activator, which left some cool little lacing. Now, this pour wasn't entirely what I'd hoped for, but that's okay. It's all learning and all fun. So I want to thank you for being here and enjoying this video with me through the end. And if you have enjoyed it, please click the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. And we will see you again in the next one.